Good evening, everyone. Once again, it's Tuesday, and this is the first Tuesday of the month, and that is August 2nd, 2016. The focus of the show is spirituality, and we have our guest host on tonight, the ordained minister, Peter Harchins, and he's going to be hosting the show. And we'll start with the invocation of the law of one. We are all one. When one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. So therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, I ask that only the highest good happen. So it is, so be it, and thanks that this is done. Amen.
So be it. Amen. I want to add that the reference number for tonight's show is 423#. So whoever wants to listen to this later, and they could do it as soon as we're done.
Sonny, it's 473.
Oh, 47. I'm sorry, I wrote it down incorrectly. 473. Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sure, thank you. So, in any case, yes, the number for the replay is 641-715-3813, access code 883267#. So, we should have a nice discussion, an interesting discussion tonight. I want to say something, and this relates to the music because I've been so into the music lately that I realize this is not the music show, but music has a strong role to play in spirituality. And there's a song called The Light by Donovan. And I first heard this song when I was living on Maui in the 80s. And I've been looking for it online for a download. I finally found it. So it's very cosmic. Speaks of the light, speaks of a person leaving their body, so-called dying, and then seeing the light and seeing these beings of light and all of this kind of thing. So maybe at some point later on in the show I'll play that. But for now, Peter, you want to start. Take it away.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. And as we had talked before the recording was put on, I'm going to discuss having checked out am still in the process of checking out the Everlasting Gospel, and in discussion of OASP and the general concept of intentional communities that are arising. So I'm going to start a little bit with just some general things that are in general that are seen to be unfolding in the world. Through my Quaker Animal Kinship vegan group, I've had contact with other vegan groups. One of it is a group that you guys may or may not know of called Plant Nation or Pure Nation. And it has been started by Dr. Campbell, the research physician and research scientist who was part of the China study and speaking to veganism, pure food. And he and his partner had grown up as dairy farmers, so it was from what I can understand, a kind of tough step for them to really, when they realized scientifically how dairy, especially in how we raise animals today, is not that good for you. And the groups seem to be growing over the world, and a lot. What's encouraging is that when I've gone to the meetings with these folks, they're young people. I think as far as folks that I'm speaking with here on the conference call, we're getting up there in age, and it's really nice to see young, vital, young people who are vegans, and very much into the concept of intentional communities, wanting to learn more about it. And Sunday, I was at one of these meetings and had given one of the young people there the information about the website for intentional communities. So this is growing, perhaps more exponentially than I thought initially, which is very encouraging. And so that brings me back to the OASB and to the everlasting gospel. And in reading initially the OASB that talks about the unfolding in this age, whether we call it the Cosmic Age and the New Age or the Messianic Age, of a time of not depending on the financial world banking system, that people will get past, co-create these communities, and in these communities there will be no economic rate of exchange as we understand it today, and that there will come a time in the world that this will supplant all the money system that exists now. So, seeing this also in the everlasting gospel, in terms of very straightforward about it. The OASB goes into more histories of what's happening in the heavens, but this, so far as I see in the gospel, is dealing with the nuts and bolts of that which will grow out of the intentional community. The OASB talks about there being a time and cycles where this occurs. This talks about, with maybe a twist on that, this may be happening sooner than later. So I kind of find that one of the kind of differences in this. But I'm very moved to see it in a way that can reach the public in general, I think, more easily than OASB, which has old language and also is a more comprehensive book about the heavens and the spirit world and all this, where this talks about that which is beyond this realm, but is really focusing on the building of this non-money system. So I'm very impressed in seeing that and seeing the simplicity of language that I think can touch a lot of people. Again, I am very impressed. Here, OASB is not...
Peter?
Yes.
Oh, I love your dissertation, but just can you clarify what's the everlasting gospel? Is that part of the Bible?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Sonny, what is the name of your friend, the architect?
Yes, Belden Gelf, and the everlasting gospel was channeled by Alan Michael, who is the leader of the One World Family, leader and founder of the One World Family. And
right.
So it is from him, yes, through him.
Sorry. The last time when I came on, we were talking about it was Belden's hosting, and he was talking about the everlasting gospel, and I had made some references of how it sounds similar to OSPI, but I had not read it, and he somewhat made a challenge about, well, read it, and which I had planned, but Dale has a copy, and he loaned it to me to read. Now, both this everlasting gospel and OSPI use the title in one of their parts of their title is Bible. So here the everlasting gospel says the New World Bible, and OSPI basically says the Bible for the Cosmic Age, which comes to about the same thing. The OSPI was published in 1882, and if I understood correctly here, I believe this was published in 2001.
Final one, yes. There were many other ones that were published earlier, just different editions of it.
The copy I have at this point is that copy. So that would be, who's good in math? How many from 1882 to 2000? Anybody? Well, so, but both speaking of this change that has to come about in our maturity, and though there are aspects that language-wise is different from OSPI, the thrust for ending a system that is tyrannical from a financial and military position and a position of violence is similar in OSPI. OSPI talks about the people who are really practicing the light of the Almighty do not war, we don't fight, eat vegetable food, have, even if not practicing for whatever reason, the concept of non-ownership, that we are basically stewards of this planet and of life and helpers of each other. And it seems to be coming about, more and more as unfolding. Now, certainly the other aspect of it, from the natural kind of reality, nothing really wants to die, so the old order that in Owassifi's terms would be called Cephas or Cephas, which is the establishment, the rule by strict law and order, and from my point of view, without really the essential part of mercy and justice, is trying to hold its ground, both in the OSPI and, from what I gather so far, in the everlasting gospel, that the higher forces, spiritual and extraterrestrial in different ways, as this book, The Everlasting Gospel, it purports, is affecting that change, and really in the long run has the greater power. But the old world order that keeps on trying to say it's the new world order of dictatorial power and tyranny is falling apart, but from obvious things in the world, it's trying to hold on to its breaking up power. So that, I find really moving. Now, again, concept-wise, there's some differences, and a lot for me, that's sort of like taking, we'll use the diamond, since it is the diamond network, and if you look at different things through a diamond or different angles of the diamond, you perceive things differently. So OSPI does not purport reincarnation. This book does. They can be, I think, understood as we understand the cosmos more from different points of view as one and the same thing from different understanding. Michael speaks in here of the collective world-mind aura, and that could also speak to reincarnation, bringing energies in from other places. As I said, I find more cohesiveness in the everlasting gospel with Oahspe in the major meat of it, which is establishing or giving birth to the real new world order of collectivism under the Creator, that most people understand the term God meaning, and us needing to be an integral part of it. It's not that folks from above are going to come and do it for us. They will do it with us, and we have to learn to be more and more committed to that oneness and to that energy of change as it unfolds in us, around us, above us, and below us. And
Peter?
Yes.
Can I comment? Because this is all what you've said. The Diamond, and I like what you said about the Diamond. Diamond's network is actually fulfilling that, a lot of that. Like 3 or 4 weeks ago on the Candy Shop show, Candy had a show with Chris, and the Galactics brought in, they called it the chip system, trading with chips. They already have that on Mars and other places. And the Galactics described it very detailed, if anybody wants to go back and listen to that. And then last night, Chris was on, the Galactics came in and basically said everything's going good. The bad guys are not in control. They may think they are. The good guys are making them think they are. And the energies are ramping up, and they're coming in, and safe zones are coming up. And so everything you've said about both of those books, things are happening, and just to bring it up to the present time. That's beautiful.
I would really agree with that. And, I mean, even though we're looking way beyond our political system as it stands at this point, I think, from my own observation anyway, see the battle between Trump and, or say between Trump and Hillary Clinton is Trump philosophically really portrays the old order of the I, me, mine, the individual and not the collective in the democratic. And again, I am not talking this from, this politics is better because this world is changing, but I'm using it as one symbolizes one camp more than the other and vice versa. And the stance of Clinton's campaign with taking in Bernie Sanders is we have to do it. We have to work together. We have to find the solution to our party and live up to our highest, best ideals. Now, whether they can pull it off or not is not the debate here.
And that brings me to one more point. We on the Diamonds Network are working together with the Galactics. They came in last night and said something was up with a certain energy and requested us to expand the law of one on it, take dominion as humans on this earth, and so we worked together with them. So at least we're working with the good guy Galactics and us, and
and I think because not just the media, because the media really reflects our own taste as a species, and we still want to see the exciting, the bad, the gory as a culture, as a world culture. And so what we see in the news is the majority of the bad news. And there is so much that isn't broadcast, and maybe for good reasons as far as changing things over, about the good stuff that people are doing and are interacting with each other.
Oh, Peter, you're getting me excited now. Don't be talking about the media stuff, because that's what the Diamonds Network, just like you described the Diamonds, we want to bring out in mass media to the world different aspects of every realm, the good, the bad, the ugly, the neutral, which is all a mixture, a rainbow, right?
Right, exactly. And
yeah, we know that mass media has been controlled by the quote bad guys.
right.
But
And even
that could be
more
changed.
liberal thing is that they also controlled by what people want to see. No one would go to the Colosseum in Rome during the Roman Empire. They didn't enjoy the havoc, and we've been so conditioned and bloodthirsty in part because so many of the people on the planet eat animals and drink blood. You know what I mean? There's a nutritionist named Gary Knowles that some people may know, and he's been fighting for veganism for years before it was popular. And I used to watch him on TV and radio back east more than I do out here, because at strange hours here when he's on. And I went to a seminar of his, and he says, we all, as kids, young people, we've gone to movies being upset about ghouls and vampires, and everybody says they don't want to have ghouls and vampires, and he says, well, what about meat eaters? They eat dead flesh, and they eat blood and drink blood. And all of a sudden it's like, the world are vampires and ghouls eating dead flesh and taking blood. I mean, it's not in the exact way that it does it in the movies, but you get my point? It's like, we become the monster because of how we've acted for centuries. And as Michael's book talks about the satanic system and how you may define the word Satan, and in OSPI too, there's different ways of defining Satan, not as this one devil creature, but the captains of evil, whether they're army generals, whether they're dictators, whether they're spirit beings, those who are chiefs are Satan. And also the negative, what it talks about in the everlasting gospel, the negative charged thoughts that are destructive, that have built up in the aura of our planet for centuries.
Spare tire, that he calls it.
Yeah. So again, when something's built up for a long time, it just doesn't dissolve. So the more we speak of peace, the more we speak of nonviolence, the more we speak of proper health, exercise, of getting a sense of non-ownership, the more we start to break down the old recording in the atmosphere, if you will.
Can I add one thing to that, Peter? I'm sorry, I'm talkative tonight.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yes, we want to create newly, but first it starts with us loving ourselves, because we want to be in a grateful, we want to get to a point in each of our unique selves where we're grateful and thankful and have loving thoughts and doing loving things for people and yourself 24/7 every minute of the day. So practice every day. And when you're in that happy thought, then that's when you can create and have your vision and write it down, and we can talk about it. So as we all work on increasing our vibrations, which are coming naturally, we just have to go with the flow, accept the energies, not reject them, and then create in that happy spot by even just talking about it, creating the vision, and then the universe just works with you incredibly.
Well, I saw there's a passage in one of the books in OSPI, and it said it's one of the ways of defining loving the Creator, and it starts. It's a very simple thing. It says, "Rejoice that you're created, seek exalted rejoicing, cultivate the light of your life, and turn away from dark and evil things." Now, that's pretty cool, but it goes back to what you're saying, Elizabeth. You got to love yourself and rejoice that you exist. And the more you can
live, and that's live, evil spelled backwards. Well, live is the right way.
Right.
We're unfolding ourselves from inside out and purging, and as within is without reflects the world. And so as we transform, the world is transforming. So it's really been quite a process for all of us. And
in a way, if you spell love backwards, it's evolve or evolve, and evolve isn't bad, and love isn't bad. But as you said, life backwards is evil.
Mm.
So it's an interesting word play there to some extent. So I'm hopeful. I mean, sometimes I get caught up in the world saying we're all here, and it's like, oh man, what is going on? And then I get to my center, get calm, and say, okay, wait a minute. And then the light comes back, and I say, okay, we just keep on keeping on, and I think it is happening, and maybe more than a little at a time, because we are only viewing it from our perspective. There's so much happening in the unseen realms, or the more external realms of the inner and outer universe. So it's something to behold. I think and I don't think it goes into it in this as much, but like I said, I haven't finished the gospel book yet. That we'll probably go as societies change, and they have certain institutions fall apart. Change is not always the easiest thing to ride, because it becomes more and more fluid, and we're used to things being very much frozen in certain ways, that they just don't change. And it was interesting that associate of ours, Daniel Nealon, was talking about that part of the Mayan prediction about 2012 and the end of that cycle and the new one beginning, is that with the end of that cycle, of that 26,000-year cycle, that things would become more fluid. They would flow more into each other, and there would be more initial upheavals that would seem initially as bad things, but we're part of disrupting the old way of doing things for the new things to be able to supplant them. So I found that kind of hopeful too, as the old apparatus is being dismantled, a new one is being set up in its place. So to me, that was something to think about.
Absolutely.
And, anyone else has some comments?
Well, I wanted to say, as far as following our spirit, our inspiration, and jumping on a wave of what inspires us, this is what I've been pursuing, the music thing very strongly. And last night when I got that download of the light, and I played it several times, and it just so energized my spirit. I mean, I was having chills, and it's like, wow, this is really something. Maybe it was not one of Donovan's more well-known songs. In fact, it wasn't on Amazon. I had to search for it, but it's almost like it wouldn't be too much, except for just a few people in the past. It wouldn't be something that would be popular like Sunshine Superman or some of those, more generalized songs that he did. But the message was so powerful, that it just really energized me, and I was just getting chills all over listening to it. So I feel like that I need to follow what inspires me like that. So I've been continuing to follow cosmic music. So I just should interject that experience. And
music has.
I was listening, and I'm always looking at the world at large. There's 6 billion people, and the people that have the spiritual gifts, the clairvoyance and the clairaudience, they're drawn to that message because they're a part of it. But in the living world that we live in, it really is such an insignificant part that it is foreign and not understandable to the vast majority of people. So the question that comes to mind after being at this for 50 years is, how do we really make that significant change in everybody's thinking that will cause those the spiritual level of the people to be able to understand spiritual things, because we're really at this stage today, we're in a very primitive state. So the thing that I'm looking for is that universality that everyone can agree to no matter what, and that those comes down to the axioms, and the conclusions I've come to, and it's evidenced exponentially in the growth of all these components. And the significant thing is there's been in the last 10 years there's been a 10% increase per year, or a 300% increase in the development of intentional individual communities. That is a significant figure to me, because that means there's something happening here, whether you're religious or spiritual or atheist or agnostic. That one central theme is to gather with your friends and your family and start a community individually where you can all cooperate together. And so the universal message of intentional communities resonates with everyone. And they say, well, I don't have any work, there aren't any jobs available, what am I going to do? I don't have any money. And then you say, well, listen, my friends and I are starting a community. You don't have to have money, just come and help us build the community. Okay? So this displaced people that as modernity takes its course and displaces all these people and puts them in the valueless column, that group of people is coming to the conclusion, okay, well, the system isn't working for us, we'll just put something together on our own, which goes back into the 60s as a basic idea of communes, and also in the WASP, the revelation of, get out of us, get with your people and form your community. So that's a major component. The second component, and this really hits to the heart of things because it has to do with our stomachs and what we eat. And there's nothing more fundamental in our existence as mortals as food. And it's this component of being vegan. And again, the Vegan Society in England reported that there's been a 350% increase in the number of vegans. The total now is over 500,000. And I use England as an example of what's happening throughout the world. So what's happening? What are people make? What are the decision that people are making individually? They want to stop killing and eating animals. And so we say, well, what's behind the scenes? What is the creator of the unseen world moving us towards? Okay, where is their inspiration on man individually to do a certain thing, and where is the power? So when I see these elements taking place, I see this is the creator's hand in the matter. So so it's a matter of saying, well, what do? Well, we want to do the creator's will. We don't want to buck our head against him or her. We want to go with the wind, And so if we're gonna have a universally accepted and understood mission that everybody can grab onto, that's based in physics and chemistry and biology and mathematics, you say, okay, stop eating meat, gather together with your friends and your family, and develop these small communities where there's a consensus-based government and it's a cooperative living, and be nonviolent. And so we don't have to talk. If we're going to be include everybody in the world, we don't have to talk everlasting gospel. We don't have to talk OWASP. We don't have to talk galactics. We just have to focus on these very simple things. And then as people develop spiritually, their gifts will come. I think I think once there's this major push in plant food diets, that those higher raised beings are going to be able to walk among us and give us our gifts. But we have to change our behavior first and become spiritual. And this goes to the commandment that was written in the WASPI. You know, I commandeth the change from a carnivorous man of contention to a herbivorous man of peace.
And Dale, let me follow on that. Using WASPI again, you know, we have this contention because of the darkness in our souls from generations of meat eating. For myself, I had been kind of Conan the Barbarian. And I think I always understood inside about vegetarianism, but didn't grow up that way. And WASPI talks about being born, you know, when you're born from meat eaters, you inherit a natural contentiousness. And the point I'm making here is that many of us have come to a plant-based diet from an omnivorous and perhaps a more on the carnivorous side of omnivorous diet, and we're born with an inherited intention. And what Dale is just saying there too, the more generations that are born from vegan people or even vegetarian people are going to be born with a more peaceful nature with each generation as the bad blood, if you will, gets siphoned out. And we are seeing this happen. There's a statement in WASPI that also says, you know, that meat will become poisonous to people. And I think that just doesn't mean from how we know now that the meat industry and the farm industry does all the antibiotics and all the kind of stuff they give the animals that cause us to be sick, overweight, all these things. But as the whole planet spiritualizes with help from those above, that literally the meat will become more poisonous to us as we become more spiritual in our nature, more etheric in our nature. And I think we'll see that happening. And you know, now the mainstream is saying, okay, just get away from the factory farming and eat animals that are treated nice. The fact is that when you're eating that dead animal, you're still eating dead flesh. And all dead flesh starts decaying from the time it hits the ground. So the more vital live foods we can use, vegetable foods, fruits, nuts, all these kind of things, the more life force we're putting in ourselves. And I think in time, the overall society will realize that all eating this flesh, however the animal's treated or mistreated, is not endures to health, to kindness, to any of these things. So
Peter, I was going to interject a thought here, and excuse me.
No, go ahead. I got mine off.
the message. See, now the message that I'm getting, okay, is directly out of necessity, okay. And there are people that have no spiritual component to their philosophy, but they just do the math, and it's really this simple. And this is what's motivating a lot of people to select to be vegans, and it's sustainability. Over 50% of the land mass on the earth is devoted to growing food for animals. And right now, they're mowing down 5 million acres a year of rainforest that are responsible for 20% of our oxygen. If we continue to do this, okay, there's just not enough fresh water or land to support an animal diet. Now, you could say, Well, there's a spiritual component, but what about when this planet was put together at the very beginning, that it was put together to have that limitation built in it to force people to make a decision to become vegan, whether they're spiritual or not. You know, it's just part of the perfect design of the universe. And so, you know, I like to stick with what is known, commonly known and understood, and stick with physics and chemistry and biology and mathematics and love and truth and wisdom and justice and peace and freedom, and develop a universal message that is comprehensible and understandable to everybody, and that they cannot pose an argument that in defense of maintaining the position of eating animals. And so then that becomes acts, and that's what I understand the Creator's commandment to be. You know, by design, the world is designed in a certain way so you don't have any choice. Okay, there is no choice. You have, and whether you understand it spiritually or not, there's no glory in being made to do a thing, but there's also the component, and Owaspy speaks of it. You know, there is an unfortunate imbecility of spirit that some people are just not spiritually equipped to understand certain things, certain spiritual things. So the world has to change in spite of whether you're spiritual or unspiritual. And this is where another quote in Owaspy, it says, the Creator is sufficient to his creations or her creations, meaning that both the unwise and the wise have got to be handled.
Another way of saying that, and I agree very much with that, and maybe putting a little humor in it, maybe, is that we've given free will. We all each individually have free will as human beings, but we forget that the Creator, i.e., the universe itself, has free will, and its free will is bigger than our free will. And sooner or later, it is going to, as you're saying, Dale has set up everything so it is in accord with universal harmony.
And I want to close because I don't want to dominate the floor here. So what I am always looking for is that universal message that can be communicated and accepted by everybody, because that's the one that's ultimately going to win the day. And so I tend not to bring in ideas that are foreign to people, not understandable, with the understanding that yes, I certainly believe in an unseen world, and I believe in a hierarchy. But for me to discuss that with a vast number of mortals on this planet is unproductive, and it's not going to accomplish anything. But me saying to you, listen, cancer and heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and cancer are caused by eating meat, and they go, oh, and then I say, it's proven by a number of studies. Dr. Colin Campbell from Cornell University, one of them, which you mentioned, and so people are doing the work, and they're saying, yeah, we need to be vegan, okay, for our own personal benefit. And right now, where selfish man is, that's what he's motivated by.
Right. And so these things, and all this is, I think, is very encouraging. And then, in part of what I'm hearing there is not, and this is the other part that I had mentioned before, as channels, we human beings and I've been part of the National Spiritualist Church and have at times some of this ability, and we're all individual, and the messages come to us individually. And Owaspy says basically what comes to a person directly is firsthand. Whatever that person transfers to someone else comes to them secondhand. So we all have to be true to our own highest light. So to get hung up in different words or phrases that one group or another group or one individual make and miss that they're taught what the concept is. If we understand that language is a semantic kind of thing, and it's limited. And I want to use an example, and I'm not trying to kind of focus on myself, but I was reading a little bit about Michael, and I've had experiences since I was like between 5 and 12 years old of being taken up in these very gigantic ships that were some of as large as worlds, which Olaspi talks about, maybe even larger. And these beings, to me, call themselves Equarios. Here, the Elohim. But these are all words that people are imparting that basically mean the same thing. What I came to understand, the Equarials meant the equal gods or the equals. And they talk. It was all about this harmony, how perfect the universe was, how they were acting in the name of the unseen universal creator. Very similar stuff. So people can get hung up. Oh, they call them such and such. They call them booty googie. These other, I know I got the truth because the Jaji told me. The names don't really make a difference because we get information how we can process that information. And the more we can understand and look at the meat of the message, is the meat, like Dale was talking, is the meat of the message saying, don't be violent? Is the meat of the message saying, work together? Is the meat of the message saying, learn to love and even like each other and yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to say, I'm processing input a lot throughout my entire life of what teachings and what people are saying and channelings and various things like that. And even like last night's show with Chris, I mean, he just gives so much information and so much channeling from these beings, and it's just a lot to integrate sometimes. But as you say, Peter, I always look for the cream of it. I won't say the meat of it, but the cream of it. What they're all saying, what they're all kind of directing us towards, and they give us information about what the bad guys are doing and things like. There's a lot of interest talked about last night about the earth changes that didn't happen, that they were trying to be engineered by the flooding of California and the big earthquakes and all that. That was all supposedly engineered by the cabal, and to scare people. But things like that, and then there was so much given that I was really processing a lot from that. But as I say, what we talk about here is kind of like how we can communicate to more people, more people that would understand what were the concepts that are.
Well, I think we were talking about, the violence and so forth. When I was talking before about the contentiousness that comes from being a meat-eater or born from a meat-eater. And I realized that one of my greatest challenges, opposed to my belief system, which has always been nonviolent, you don't kill, you don't hurt, blah, blah, blah. But I also realized that there is this flesh nature that has that tendency to be contentious. So the biggest barrier to me imparting my knowledge is me. So the more that I've talked to Dale about this, and I think on one of the Faithless group shows we talked about it too. Nonviolence usually just means you don't shoot people, you don't punch them, you don't do this, and you don't use bad language. I take it to a bigger thing of non-resistance, which is if we hear ideas that are unfamiliar, we don't immediately close down and say, oh, that can't be. I just can't accept that. And not accept or reject it, but investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
The more, like I'll see something in here or some other book that I say, oh, that doesn't feel, I say, wait a minute, cool it, Peter. look at the angle, and see what the light has to say.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that we don't have the primitive, knee-jerk, self-defense attitude that, oh, I'm going to be challenged, my ideas being challenged, or my belief systems being challenged, and react negatively, the more, what Dale is talking about, the more that we become open to that light, the more even just being in the presence of people without even talking sometimes will allow that light to come out, because it won't have our own contentiousness as a barrier for our communication psychically and emotionally with people in the first place.
What you just
personalities out of the way, the personality.
What you just described here was the more we do it, the more we practice it, the more the programming that we've had on us will come off.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect. I always believed when I was a kid that, the old thing from the regular Bible, hate the sin, love the sinner. And I practice really over and over that when I don't like what someone's doing, I'm not liking the behavior, I am not disliking the person. And the more I practiced it, the better I got at it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm perfect at it by any means, but you have to condition.
The more peace that in the same situation.
It's like firemen, policemen, rescue people, they practice so then when something happens, they can do it better. If you don't practice it, when something happens that throws you off, you won't be able to practice it because you're being thrown off by the event.
Yeah, and I was going to add this, Peter, that this is my whole intent. I'm all-inclusive of everybody's ideas, and I want to get to the universal message. What is the all truth for everyone, and including Belden and the everlasting gospel, the Owaspy and the Galactics, and then it comes down to what do we do right here and now to move the thing in for lack of better words, the correct position. And and those are the three things that we can do: encourage vegan diets, encourage intentional communities, and encourage nonviolence in everything we do. And those three things are a universal message that we can grow on and not have any debate about. And so that's the essence of when I see a difference of opinion, I see an opportunity to resolve an issue and grow. I don't walk away from controversy. There's a big 800-pound gorilla in the living room, and until we all address all the individual aspects of this, to everyone say we got to digest it and chew it and resolve it and come to an agreement on a common understanding before we can move forward. And so, and that's that. I want to include Bill or anybody else that has any other ideas, because I don't want to miss anything either.
Well, when I had that I've mentioned to some people who've heard it, my I am experience at 13 or 14 years old, it was very beautiful, and all of a sudden I just couldn't move. I was sitting in the backyard of friends of my parents, and you could see all this light and light beings and whatever. And I heard, I am that I am, and I knew that it wasn't me. And I'm saying, I was having difficulty with my father, as a lot of 13 and 14-year-olds have. And I didn't know that much about religion, but I said in my mind, well, Father, everybody hears this voice gets stoned or crucified, so I don't want to talk to you. But anyway, I had to talk. And what I gathered from what was coming through, and put it in short terms, is, and I said, what do you want me to do? He said, what came in the silent, the small, still voice, which really wasn't real. I mean, it was everywhere but nowhere, and all that kind of thing. And it said, I want you to study different religions, study different sciences, not in different peoples, not to become a master of anything, to know that I am one, all is one. And it was and I said, well, why are you talking to me? You came to Jesus. You came to Moses. They were your son. And and the silent voice comes back, you're listening to me. You're my son. So I'm saying, I'm not trying to say that the point. If you listen to the voice, you're its child. You are anyway, but by conscious connection. And I said, well, I can't just do that. I mean, I can't do all of that. I can't do, like, how long is it going to take? It doesn't make any difference. Just do it. And I asked, well, why did it really come to me? He said, well, because you spent, as a young person, you were trying always to understand how the other person you're talking to was understanding it and feeling it. This is going back, and I'm just bringing this up to what we're talking about here. The more we can give validity, no matter how much we disagree with the other person, to their point of view, to their emotions, how they may be seeing things, the more we are opening up for what you're talking about, this dialogue.
Yeah.
I have to get past my own ego to hear your story, and vice versa. And when we do that, the strange thing is that we actually become stronger in our individuality, in the sense of the connection with the Creator. It's like Owaspi talks about perfect life, motion, individuality, and person. And person, for that definition, is the unity and harmony of oneself and the unity and harmony of the universe. And the more we can do this, and what you're saying, the basic message is, listen to people, and what was being pushed too was for me to be basically a vegan, and I saw a vision of this old man sitting on the mountain with the long hair and the white beard, and I said, well, who's that? They said, well, that's going to be you, and I had all this vegetable food around. I said, oh no, that's not me. But the simplicity of the message you're talking about, nonviolent, eat vegetable food, live together in harmony, make communities a place that are small enough that people really know each other. And we're doing it. And and again, how they spoke to me came through how they figured I would understand what they're saying more. What came through Michael is they came in language that would understand, that fit his understanding. What comes to you fits your understanding. And the more we can understand that also that those giving the message have to find ways to communicate with us when they find open sources that the vehicle they're communicating with, the human being they're communicating, will understand and can receive what they're saying. So they have the task of figuring out what way to communicate with us individually and collectively that's going to work the best.
Yeah, well, this is an opportunity. Once again, we're coming to the close of the program. We're running over a bit. But is there anyone else that has any questions or comments? Please come in. We have a hard time getting in that 1 hour time frame, but we're working on it.
Well, if there's anybody that hasn't been speaking, but if nobody comes on, I have something to add.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was thinking about how, well, everything we talk about here is what the hippies believed in, and as I was one, and still am one, peace, love, harmony, living in community. And in hippie times, people were getting away from eating meat a lot, too. They were getting into vegetarianism because taking the psychedelics sensitized everybody a lot more to the violence that was involved in meat eating. So those are all our hippie ideals that are coming forward now, the cream of the crop, so to speak. And that was the time that the One World Family grew, and Alan Michael started the One World Family in San Francisco, and the books of the Everlasting Gospel started to be written. So these were part of this particular wave of spirituality, or awareness, awakening that came out of the 60s, whereas philosophy was much earlier. It seemed to be tied in with the spiritualist movement and a lot of the psychic. There was an opening at that time too, a psychic opening, and that this is the more current. And I'm saying they all have value, as well as so many others, so much else that has been around, and we just have to be able to allow our inner light, so to speak, our inner wisdom to look at all of this input and just see what feels right and feels good. What comes together in some kind of a peaceful mix is part of the evolution of everything that's been going on.
Did Alan pass on already?
Yes, he passed on. I think it was 2010. I'm not sure. It was a few years back. He lived to be in his 90s, and I'm in contact with several people through Facebook and otherwise that are were around him, and so yeah, he's on the other side now. If you're all amenable, I would like to play the light.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be a good way to close out.
Yeah. Okay. I have it on.
I'm going to mute out.
Okay. So I hope that now I trust it. I got to turn it back on. Because I'm still learning how to use this MP3 player.
What is the number to play back the big, not just the small, 473? What is the regular phone number for that? Is it the same regular number?
It is it's the same prefix, 641-715, and it's 3813 instead of 3836. That's the difference.
Wait a minute. 3813?
Yes, that's the last numbers are different. And then you use the guest access, not the moderatory number, but the 883267 number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm fiddling with my MP3 player right now, getting it turned back on. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Okay. I am ready. There. Uh-oh. On my way to the land of the I laugh. That my soul was as far as my girl on my ship. That the image of death that did a song in my head. And you different am I that my life that did not end. Society, but you in my mind, oh, that I may be worthy to shine for the light.
Are you looking for healing or a change in your life to help you enjoy it more fully? You might benefit from a galactic energy reading and clearing from Chris Jacobs. Chris will work with you on a soul level to clear unseen negative influences, implants, programs, contracts, and energetic blocks. Chris Jacobs is a gifted energy healer. Contact him today at ChristopherStephenJacobs@gmail.com.